This week, Poland, Hungary and Slovakia halted imports of Ukrainian grain, going against the EU in the process, who warned against countries taking unilateral action on trade. So why did these countries take the drastic step of banning imports of Ukrainian grain, and what are the latest developments? Let's find out from our colleagues at DW.
Yeah, so this story might seem a little bit strange at first glance, because when we consider some of these countries, Poland in particular, they have been such close allies of Ukraine since the Russian invasion. But this move by Poland and the others has been for one big reason, and that's the domestic agriculture sectors within their countries. So farmers in Poland and those other Central and Eastern European states were unhappy because there was a huge glut of cheaper Ukrainian grain, keeping their prices low. That's because the EU had suspended tariffs and quotas on Ukrainian grain after the invasion in order to maintain supply, and much of that ended up being transported into countries like Poland via road networks. Now, here's the catch. That was supposed to be sent on to countries in Africa and the Middle East, but it hasn't been happening due to logistics bottlenecks, mostly around trucks. And as a result, there's been too much grain on the market in those countries and prices have plummeted. But there has been some news overnight. So last night, Poland and Ukraine were in negotiations, and Poland has agreed to lift the temporary ban. Ukrainian grain will be allowed to enter Poland again, but with stricter rules on preventing that grain actually entering the Polish market for sale. No news yet on the other countries, but we can probably expect similar deals shortly.
What is the EU's position on all this?
Well, the EU certainly wasn't happy, and a big reason why that deal has been done quickly is because the EU was so strong in its rebuttal of Poland and the other countries for putting a ban in place in the first instance. The EU has insisted that trade policy must be decided centrally by Brussels. Countries should not take unilateral action on it. And when we think about the EU, the fundamental basis for its existence, after all, is a common trade policy. So there were doubts over the legality of any bans by Poland and the others. And the EU was very clear in its opposition. It said it was simply not acceptable what the countries had done at such a time of sensitivity and tension in Europe. Now, the EU is trying to help the domestic agriculture markets in the countries like Poland that have been affected. They've offered emergency agriculture aid. But nonetheless, it seems that the EU will still maintain that tariff-free access for Ukrainian grain for at least another year. So the issue may return in the future.
So what's going to be the fallout of this? Are these grains now going to be sold to countries in Africa and other parts of the world as was originally intended?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, at the start of the war, there were genuine fears of global food shortages because of Ukrainian grain not being moved on from the ports there. But as we have seen clearly, because of this issue with Poland and the others, a lot of that grain has not been moved on to countries in Africa and the Middle East in any event. Now, experts say it's not necessarily important which grain goes where. The really key thing for developing nations in particular is that the price of grain is kept as low as possible. And in order for that to happen, it's very important that Ukrainian grain keeps flowing into global markets and is not kept in Ukraine. Worryingly, though, that is not guaranteed at the moment. The Black Sea Grain Initiative, that's the deal that was struck by Russia and Ukraine in order that it allows grain to leave Ukraine. It's on very shaky ground. Now, it's due to expire in a month's time, and for several months now, Russia has been warning that it may not renew it due to curbs on its own agricultural exports.
Right, well, thank you so much for that, Mr. Sullivan. We appreciate your update. That is DW, our partners in Germany.